All right. Welcome, A Little Crazy Podcast. I am David Magee with the Phoebe Goodwin. Phoebe.
Hey, David.
Hey, I missed you. We had an episode I had to do all by myself.
I know, I had FOMO.
Like, seriously.
I had FOMO.
Well, I had need for you because I talked for 50 minutes by myself.
I'm not surprised. I don't doubt it.
No, that like
You've
truly,
got a lot to say.
I do. Well, it was about the message that I give in schools to students and parents, but I looked up and Clay, our engineer, I was thinking I'd done it for 25 minutes talking and we're recording, and he's like, "Oh, that was 50."
Oh.
50 minutes.
Hey, that's awesome.
But I give it so many times in schools to students, and I had given it the day before. In a school.
It was fresh.
Yeah. I had 800 young ladies at Hutchison School in Memphis. That was so great. You would think this old guy, when I get in those girls' schools, they're more eager. They listen better, just being honest. And so that's one of my
Girls
favorite
are great.
audiences. Yeah, they are. We talked a little bit about this at the school with them, more so than the guys do. It's not that the guys don't have smartphone addictions and problems. They just don't talk about it as easily. So today's topic is something a lot of people face. There's one study that shows 57% of Americans are addicted to their smartphones. So that's more than half. So I have a question for you. Are you addicted to your smartphone?
Probably.
And I asked that before you answered, to be fair, just because I've really enjoyed your writing on your Substack, Do Walk on the Grass?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so I've really enjoyed that. And some of your better writing, I feel like, has been lately, where you've talked about this wrestling as a human with the time in your day and your distraction. And you mention your phone often.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you're lying to yourself if you are in my generation and say you're not addicted to your phone. I mean, I remember 4th grade, the iPad came out, and I would stay awake at night thinking about getting an iPad. Now, I never got an iPad. My dad got an iPad, and the day it came in, he made it very clear it was his iPad and there were to be no games on it. But I still was so fascinated with technology. And I think that's a common theme for people in my generation because it played with our imagination at the time. Our imaginations were still so rich and vivid that the technology came alongside and seemed to offer a flourishing for your imagination. Instead, it really took away. It numbed your imagination. And so I think growing up in a time where there's really important cognitive development happening and there's technology in that space, you're bound to have some reliance on it, And so, yes, in short, I'm addicted.
And what I wondered is, are you, what you've gone through with that lately and you've written about, because sometimes when I write, what I write about when it reaches others, it feels more dramatic, but it's always real. It's very real. As in, if I write that kind of thing, it means it's bothering me in my life and I want to get control of it. So it's real. But then when other people read it, so tell me the magnitude of it. I mean, you seem to hit a period recently where you're like, I think you said you were literally going to physically separate yourself from it.
Oh, yeah.
Did you, and why?
Yes.
B,
so
why?
This post you are, what is the word?
Referring to?
Referring to. Some writer. I don't even know what the word referring is. The post you're referring to was kind of this epiphany or revelation I had the beginning of February. January is such a long month. It's you're just trying to survive, and then on top of putting New Year's resolutions, I don't know how people survive because it's the longest month of the year. And I just had this, feeling I want to start now. Like, I want to do something, but I want it to be approachable. February is the shortest month. I can do something for 28 days. And so January, I just kind of got sick of my scrolling.
And so give me a picture of what that looks like. Is that at home after work? Is that in the morning after work? And are you looking up thinking, I didn't mean to spend that much time?
Yeah, I mean, both. So I got rid of social media for 3 years. I didn't have it. I got it back in August, was very careful with it because you know what you're holding in your hands now. You know,
Right.
it's not just some fun way to share photos, it's possibly an addiction. And so I was very careful and then just kind of slipped into the habit of, oh, I'm just going to check my phone like I'm bored at work. And then 20 minutes go by and I'm like, whoa.
What have I done?
What have I done? And then it got to the point at stoplights, I was checking my phone. And then it got to the point I got home, would sit on the couch, sit in my bed, scroll for literally like maybe an hour or so. And this sounds dramatic. Like people scroll for like 4 to 5 hours.
For a lot of people, that may seem so normal, but what you're saying, and the studies actually verify what you're saying is an incredible distraction.
Absolutely.
And so what you're saying and what I remember reading is you have things you want to achieve. You would like to practice your writing, for example. You want to live a life outside of that little device.
Yes. And so much of my writing has to do with getting out and living and finding hobbies and spending your time in a way that's beneficial to you and the people around you. And I just got so convicted of this is my crutch. Like I wake up in the morning, I scroll. I go to work, I scroll. Anytime I'm bored, I'm not letting myself be bored. I'm just scrolling. And it had become such a habit, it was like reaching for. And so February 1st, I'm like, I've got to get this out of my room.
So that's your new February resolution,
yes,
right? You
my
didn't have
February
a New Year's
resolution
resolution because we talked about those, a resolution. You're like, no, I'm just going to like, but February arrived and you decided enough of that, I'm having one.
Right.
So you started this in February.
I started this in February 20 days ago, and I started charging my phone in my bathroom, which sounds like, okay, Phoebe, how much does that do? But when I'm done brushing my teeth, I leave my phone in the bathroom, I shut the door, and I read, or I write, or I do something productive that helps me, first of all, get to sleep and helps me actually get things done. And then when I wake up, I have to get up, turn my alarm off, and then my day has started. So I'm not rolling over, hitting snooze, and then scrolling for 3 hours, and then being late to work. It was just a really small thing. I was like, I can do this. But the first...
Have you done it?
Yes,
Okay,
I
the
have.
first day. Sorry, go. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine. The first 2 days, I was having withdrawals.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask you. Because the studies say, and I've seen it in others, people literally have withdrawals.
I was like, what do I do? What do I do? I don't have anything to do right now. And the whole thing, this is so silly. And people are going to hear this and be like, she's so Gen Z. But I was trying to make my attention span longer. So I was still letting myself like go to YouTube, go to Netflix, watching long form media, because cutting it out completely isn't all that sustainable.
Right.
You're supposed to be entertained.
And we live in a world, right, entertainment is there, and a lot of it's very good.
But I was doing like TV shows, movies, long form, like short films on YouTube, interviews on YouTube, like things like that where I wasn't just watching for 10 seconds and on to the next. That's like mental whiplash over and over and over and over again. And so in the past 20 days, my attention span has gotten longer. Like it has. I have felt it get longer. I started reading again.
Fascinating.
And the whole thing was, it was kind of an experiment of like, I don't like this. I want this to change. And if I don't do it, I'll never stop. It'll only get worse. And slowly my mind began making up for what I had lost. And I like finished 3 books that I had started in January.
No kidding.
And I have like started watching 40-minute TV shows without having to scroll on my phone or my computer. I've been writing a lot more. I've been journaling a lot more. And it's just, it's
so
crazy.
You had reached the point. That's what I was wanting to understand is because see, I had a lot of years of living right before these things. So I have my own time I spend on there, like my personal computer on a device. I don't want to suggest it's not in my hands, but maybe unless there's some big basketball game I want to see a score of while I'm watching a show, I can sit in a movie theater or I can watch a show without like turning to it for 40 minutes. That wouldn't have been the case with you. I mean,
No,
I don't. For most people,
genuinely,
it's not.
it would not have. And there was even one morning last week, I went to the coffee shop. I actually saw Clay there, which was funny. And I had left my phone at home.
Clay, our engineer.
And yes, Clay, our sound engineer. I had left my phone at home and didn't realize until I got to the coffee shop. And I was like, this is so freeing. And then I thought, I was like, do I need to go back? I was like, no, I don't need my phone to do the work I'm doing. Yeah, if I get in a car accident, we'll figure out what to do.
I mean,
but,
people used to get in those all the time without a phone.
And so it was crazy. It was like in 2.5 weeks. That was the difference. It wasn't. And I have like started, like, I'll go on Instagram every now and then and see what's going on. And I like click out and I don't.
Yeah. And that's what, I use it. So I'm obviously on social media a fair amount. I'm a writer. We have a podcast. I'm on there a lot. The difference, there's just different people and personalities. A lot of people close to me and family, they open social media and they stay there a long time. And they're looking at people's pictures. I don't actually look at them. I just kind of might click a like on a few if they pop up and didn't even look at them. And I'm using it for my own purposes. I need to post this. And then I'm out. But there is a different way people use it, actually looking at one post after another. So we talked about it on the 3rd episode of this podcast when we had my daughter Mary Hallie on. And at the end, we had a discussion of you guys might come back on, and you did. What scale of importance would you say social media? Is it what's on this phone in general? Or is it social media adds this extra thing that to you feels I'm spending too much time there?
Well, I think it's a tough draw because social media is great for so many reasons. There's a reason why people
Absolutely.
love it. Like I used to be completely anti-social media. I was that girl. And I'm not anymore because...
That's when you quit 3 years ago? So then you were like, can't do that, done?
Right. I just didn't see any good. And now that I have it back with a completely different perspective, I see the benefit.
There are some benefits.
Especially being out of school, it's easy to keep up with friends.
They don't have to, what they're doing. You have a general idea.
Right.
If somebody gets a new job, if somebody has a baby, if somebody's getting married, you have some idea.
You never miss a birthday.
If somebody got Botox, you know.
You know.
If they've gotten a new filter, that you know.
You know, exactly. But then there's also this side of Instagram when you're bored, you're tired, you don't want to do much. You can watch other people live life for you.
And you can do that, but it can also make you start feeling bad about what you're not doing.
Right. And I think that's kind of the point at which I got to in the beginning of this month where I would be bored, I'd be tired after work, and I'd just let other people live for me. I'd scroll through the reels, I'd laugh at their funny videos, I would contemplate the dramatic poem I saw. Like, I was just like, this is great. Other people are doing things so I don't have to. But then it gets to the point where you're seeing everything everyone else in the entire world is doing, and you're like, you get up and you're like, I have to go do something. I have to go do something worth something.
It can't just be a mundane life where I will check in. I have to do something. It feels like people are doing bigger things,
right,
more important
or something
things.
Worth posting about.
Right.
I think that is the biggest thing for my generation is we've always seen our life through the lens of a post. There's never been a time since middle school. Social media has been a part of my friends and like people my age's life. And we've always seen life. Is this Instagrammable? Is this post-worthy? Oh, like, should I post this? Should I post that? I'm curating my life and what I do, where I go, how I dress for the view of people I don't know. And so that's where you just have to be cognizant, so aware of its impact on your life to know, who am I? You know, because if you're always doing something for other people, then how do you know who you really are?
It's hard to find your own identity. It's hard to find your own true feelings. Truly, this episode, since I get to a lot of schools throughout the country and speak and get a lot of engagement with students, it's kind of silly cliche to say social media and smartphones are a challenge for people. However, it's just true, and it is the number one issue. This probably is the most important episode because it, as you said, in a sense, it can sound silly.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have to go almost lock my phone away in the bathroom.
That's sometimes what you have to do.
But it's so important because it's taking over your life. And when I speak in schools and I have parts about social media and things they can do about it and how they deal with it and problems that might come from it, you should see, if I've got 800 students out there, they're all nodding.
That's it.
Your generation, the ages 30 downward in particular, know this so well. They don't want to live without it because they really can't, but it absolutely runs over their life. Here's an interesting fact. A high school junior, on average, we've had this fact on here before, spends 9.5 hours on their smartphone. 9.5 hours is a high school junior. And I tell that to high school students, and some of them laugh and go, well, right, except it's more.
Yeah.
They don't think that's enough because that study of average comes out to there's some young people out there who don't have one at all or just have, really tight restrictions. Right. They're locking theirs in their bathroom,
Yeah. And
9.5 hours.
That is so interesting because no one tells us what's right and wrong about social media. But
well, they just hand you this time bomb. It's like, here you go.
But when you hear that number, no one's initial reaction is like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That is good for my child's mental health.
Oh.
That is beneficial for them. That's going to help them do this. No one tells us that, it's bad. Deep down, everyone knows. If you tell someone you're sober, they're like, deep down, that's great. No one's like, oh, you shouldn't be sober. You shouldn't do this.
Rules, if you have a drinking problem.
That's what I'm saying. It's so similar.
There's 12-step meetings you can go to in every neighborhood just about. There are people who can give you their advice. There's a lot of education online. Truly, with this, we just hand this to young people. That's why when I'm in schools, I always say, I'm so sorry. Mm-hmm. We just hand this to them with no guidebook, so to speak. No, and parents have, we're going to talk on an upcoming episode about how parents can better talk to their children. And sadly, what parents do when they're frustrated is you have to get off your phone. You're on it too much. Put your phone down. Meanwhile, parents are on their phone just as much. But it starts with children. 2/3 of children are on a smartphone 4 hours a day. I didn't say teens. I said children. That's just a big number. I mean, think about that. And
that is a big number.
It's a big number. But here's one for you. So here's a quiz, Phoebe. Would you think that silencing your smartphone helps you achieve more concentration or less? Quiz.
I haven't had a quiz in so long.
Well, let's see. You got more focus since you've been locking your... Yeah.
Okay, it goes both ways. If it's silenced, you might be more prone to check it because you're not being...
Yes,
is that it?
You got
so
it on your
less?
first one. Ding, ding.
Okay.
You won the quiz.
Woo!
You get an A. The studies show that if people that are silencing their phone, now, some reasons, like I've never had I don't recall the last time I turned a ringer on.
People who have their ringer on, if you're listening to this, turn it off. No one wants to hear what you've got going on.
I mean, it's like dinging
Seriously,
and all kind of
no
noises.
one wants to hear.
The worst is when it dings and then it rings. People
and then you hear their typing. It's like, that's etiquette.
And they type and you
they're
hear the
always
clicks.
A certain age group.
Yeah.
And so if you're listening to this, you know who you are.
Yeah, I don't want you hurting you. No, your mother listens. Does she do that? I don't want to pick on her.
She does, actually. I will have to turn her.
Okay.
She doesn't know how to silence her phone, so I'll help her do that.
I know some people that also don't do that, but I don't have mine ring or click or anything. But the studies show that use is actually increased by people who silence their phone all day long because, and I'm guilty of this, let's say I'm trying to write a book, which I do often, so I have my phone silent, but if I've messaged somebody like, Phoebe, Can you record today at 4? I'm waiting, especially since I know you don't check your phone or respond to me promptly. I'm needing to know what Phoebe's planning, right?
Yeah.
And it's on silent, and there I am picking it up.
Right.
And so I match up with the studies that say you may use it more.
It makes sense. I mean, we think we're really important. And I think when I have my phone on, it stresses me out. Like, it's always on Do Not Disturb. It's always on silent. It does not vibrate. Because there's the psychology linked to your phone buzzing and your heart rate ticking up.
I don't want any part of that. So I don't have any noises coming from my phone. No movements, no noises.
And then I'm not like, I can have my phone right on me, and I could get a million texts, and I wouldn't know until
and
I picked
you can
it up.
Respond when you're ready.
And I'll respond when I'm ready.
Yes.
I mean, people didn't respond in like, the usual response time was 3 to 5 business days when you would write letters.
Exactly.
Maybe 2 weeks.
And you know what's funny? When I first started writing books, now when I email, say, my agent, or sometimes we text message my literary agent, I mean, I expect him to respond to me immediately. And the agents are so busy because they're running the business side of stuff, and he's president of a big agency. So he's got that whole responsibility. But in this day and age, I expect a response. And I'm no different, he says, than all the authors. Now, I don't push him on that. I don't tell him that. But I do.
Well, you just did.
I know. Maybe he's not listening, but I don't. I've never said that to him, so I want to be clear. I'm not pushy about it. I'm just telling you what I feel.
We've become accustomed to immediate gratification.
But I'm so old, Phoebe, that I began querying agents when I decided to write books now 22 years ago. There was email, but literary agents, the good ones, they like to be old school as much as possible. They're all digital now. But in 2001 and 2002, for example, while email was fully in use and we'd been through the .com era, a lot of your New York literary agents at the time were trying to prove something and protect their time, sort of like you locking your smartphone in your room. That's how they were about email. And the big ones would still make you correspond by snail mail. And I would have to write a letter. Now, once they say, I remember when mine landed a big contract from HarperCollins for me, believe me, they started emailing then. And they came in hot and quick. Oh my gosh, good news. But even then, they would email me, I would read it, and I didn't really think they would read it back until the next day.
And now I'm like, I send a text, I'm like, okay, why haven't they responded?
Why aren't they responding?
Right.
But I kind of liked it in the snail mail, and it wasn't always 3 to 5 days. My favorite thing, slight diversion, my favorite letter, and I have it stuck inside of my first book. It was hard as a first-time author. It still is. It's harder now, I think, but it was still plenty hard in, say, late 2001, where I said, I will write books. I'd been a newspaper editor. I'd been an award-winning columnist. Although I live in Oxford, Mississippi. Our bookstore owner was the president of the American Booksellers Association. Right. It seemed very approachable that I could do this. And so I queried, as you would have to do in those days. I queried probably 15 agents. Here's my project. I'm looking for representation. Well, I got one quick. And it moves so fast, like it never does. It was kind of this dream story, and just bigger than dreams come true if you're thinking, I want to be a writer. And it escalated so fast that I land an agent. Within 2 months, my proposal is going out. It turns into a bid, and I end up with a very nice 6-figure contract from HarperCollins. And suddenly, I'm a writer. And here comes snail mail 6 months later. I've finished my manuscript. I've submitted it, and the book is about to come out from HarperCollins, and I get a rejection letter in the mail from one of the biggest literary agents that I had wanted. And I had wanted this person, and I remember thinking, I know I could make it as a writer if that person decided to represent me. And it was the one I wanted, but I sent letters to others just to try to make sure I got one. And the rejection letter that showed up in the mail 6 months later, after I got a 6-figure deal, submitted my manuscript, said, I'm just not sure this is a very commercial project. I still have that stuck in a book on my bookshelf. It was a great motivator. I keep that letter. For every time that I feel like maybe I have a bad idea and it's a little crazy, not to play off the pun of this podcast, but that's why it's named that. I remember what's possible, that you're going to get a lot of no's and it will be very difficult, and who you think will get you there. And, that was snail mail at its best, and it wouldn't have been the same. My story is becoming a writer without getting that rejection letter after I had a 6-figure deal. Because most people get the rejection letter and don't get one, and then they're defeated, and they feel like, well, I'll never make it. Because they believe what that letter says.
Most great authors have had several.
Oh, my gosh.
I saw something about how many rejections J.K. Rowling had and Dr. Seuss.
So many.
And I think patience leads to endurance. And
It
right
does.
now, there's no patience.
So back to that is
We have no
everything's on
patience.
this digital phone, and you're just getting immediate. So my point is that. So let's put me in the digital world, in a smartphone world. Let's say I go to the agent I want so badly first. Now I have enough seasoning. Believe me, I'm tough enough to deal with this. But back then, when I decided I would be a writer, let's say that it did not come through snail's mail and reach me 6 months later. Let's say I got an immediate response before I'd barely finished my idea and they reject me. Would I have continued? Would I have continued?
That's why when you see the books on your shelf, it took a lot of no's for them to get on your shelf.
Oh, my gosh, yes.
And I think we forget how much work it takes to do what you love. Just because you're good at it and you feel passionate about it doesn't mean other people are going to want you to do it. And I think we live in this world where we see everyone living a dream life. Everyone has a dream life.
And that goes back to your social media thing. It's like there is no failure. Nobody's posting. And in fact, to be honest, just very honest, I have almost posted multiple times a failure post. Like, I'm such a loser. I've just failed again. I just said I was going to go achieve this, and it's just not gone that well. But then I never do. It's not that I'm hung up on how I will look. It's that I don't know that anybody really wants it.
Right. I mean, even the failure post, it's like, okay, that is a perfect tear falling down your cheek. Like, did you Photoshop that?
Yes. Yeah, no,
But I think
exactly, because that's it. It feels like, are you just framing
fabricating
this?
it.
Yeah, believe me, I'm
we're
not.
all-
I failed a lot.
We're all being manipulated. But I think that's why writing, I love, and I mean, obviously you've seen this, but it's so vulnerable. It's not. I was talking to my mom when she was here this week, and she was talking about how when you write, you pour over it and you think about it and you spend all this time chewing on it and understanding what you want to say, whereas we're obviously in the big world of podcasts where what we say just comes off the tip of our head. Like, we don't have notes often. We don't have a script. We're just saying whatever we think, which there's a place for. It's good.
Absolutely.
But I think when you look at writing, it's a patient process.
It's a crafted.
And you've written books, you've seen that stories age with time. And the more time you spend away from a story and you go back to, the better you can revise it. And so I think we are so used to, okay, I'm going to craft this. Post. I want to get a million likes. I want to get a million likes. I want to get a million likes. But there's this lost art form of patience. And I've lost it. And that's
because your writing will never be good enough. And I don't mean just you. I mean any of us. The distraction of a smartphone, it attacks teens' well-beings, and that's well documented. Let me be clear on this. What you are saying right now, it attacks the creativity of a writer like nothing I've seen. And there are times I really would not identify myself as having a smartphone addiction, though it's in my hand probably 12 hours a day.
Well, you've lived enough life apart from it.
Yeah, like meaning I'm using it as my computer. If people are sitting on a computer at work, I'm not doing things on it that I'm being lost in time that I feel like it's unproductive.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm not calling it a smartphone addiction for me, but here's where the line blurs. As a writer, there is nothing that attacks my ability to write something good more than that smartphone. And I have to go to war with it when I'm writing. And I almost sense on the other end, probably like you do when I'm texting you, are you going to meet at 4 to record a podcast because you hadn't responded quick enough? I'm joking, of course, but you know, because I respect getting space from. I respect that, but when we want an answer, of course. But when I have my phone and it's time to really write. Like over the past couple of months, you know, I've been working on my proposal for my next book, and what you suggest is. It is a craft. You can't just talk like a podcast. You can't just say this. You can, but it's not good enough. And it takes seasoning. It takes revision. So I'd worked for 6 months off and on this book about fathers and sons. And I always knew that wasn't it, but that's part of the process about you have to start and you have to spit it out, and it may not be sellable. It might not be the thing. You know there's something there. Your agent says there's something there. But I can tell you that while I may sit here and say I would not identify as just smartphone addiction, though it's in my hands all day. It's not, I don't feel like it's damaging my life in a lot of ways, except in writing. And I, at one point recently said, this isn't getting where I need it to go quickly enough, and I had to distance myself from my smartphone for a significant period during the daytime, and guess what happened?
You wrote more. And you wrote
I
better.
had a manuscript transform before my eyes, and not in 3 months, in 3 days.
Yeah.
3 days. I'd had it close. But I transform into something much more readable, much more relatable, much more where, you know, my agent and others about fell over.
Yeah.
And they were like, your life will change with a work like this, where before I was just crunching it. And so I asked myself, would I have had that all along if I just removed my smartphone?
Well, and I mean, you're saying that as someone who has written successfully several books, and you think...
can I be not just so rude and say I've written like 14? But
You've written a lot of books. And what about the person who's never going to write because they're too busy scrolling? What about the person who's never going to pick up a paintbrush? I will die on this hill. I will literally climb up this hill and die on top of it. We have ushered in the death of hobbies. And I wrote about that on my Substack.
Yeah, it was good. That's what led me to this podcast episode.
There are no more hobbies. People are no longer finding ways to create and to do things with their free time because... why would you if you can scroll?
It's what the television did to America in the 1950s.
Yeah.
Suddenly TV took off. And, you know, I grew up I was born in the mid-60s, grew up largely in the 70s. I don't remember the father in my household doing anything but coming home from work, getting something to eat, and sitting down in a big chair in front of the TV. And, you know, I might sneak over there when the Brady Bunch or the Partridge Family came on. He was there until 10 o'clock, and then he had to get in the bed and get ready for work the next day. And so I remember thinking, what's the future in that as a child? And yet that's kind of where we are. And so for me, I transformed my writing future because I separated this phone from me for 3 days. I went from something that was another nonfiction book I could sell. I mean, at this point, I've got not enough, but just enough track record in a tough publishing environment with a good enough agent that it was clear I could write another book. I mean, not Vanity. I mean, I've done books for HarperCollins, Penguin, Wiley, you name them, Random House. It was clear I could do another book. But the difference in getting a contract and doing one versus really having a breakout or something that is highly commercial, I mean, it's a fine line, but it's a big gulf there in that between that fine line. I moved my smartphone for 3 days, and I'm at war with his fathers and sons concept, and I end up with something that's more the gift of, you know, a father and a son growing up together that feels more like Tuesdays with Maury than this writer struggling to get yet another. And I separated from my smartphone for 3 days, essentially just in the office. I mean, back home, let me be clear, I'm checking emails and looking at football scores. I don't want to
basketball. What football are you checking? Super Bowl.
This happened a few months ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this happened a few months ago. It's a more recent example, and I wonder, you know, like you said, it makes me sad to think of these devices stealing tomorrow's writers or stealing, and that's the reality of it. So one more question for you: when you lock your phone away in the bathroom, how many times, 2 questions. First, how many times have you broken and gone in there to see?
I really don't.
Yeah, you stood.
I mean, the first night
strong?
I would like stand in front of my sink texting my friends before bed.
You
I
would
would
get
be
one
standing.
more, yeah.
There's nowhere to sit, and so I just would be standing on my phone texting. But that's uncomfortable.
You hadn't. Yeah, it's uncomfortable, but you hadn't yet.
I really
parted
didn't.
from it.
Like once that door
Once it
was
was
closed,
gone?
it was like, well, I don't really need it, and it's.
So 44% of Americans say, according to research, that not having their phones gives them anxiety. Would you be in that category?
No.
So you've got a 1 in 2 shot. It's
No.
44%. So it's like when you saw Clay, our engineer, at the sound engineer at the coffee shop, you were freed from your phone,
I
not
was like,
anxious.
oh, I don't have my phone. If
Yeah.
I need something, I had my computer.
Yeah.
I
I would be in that category also. It's with me all the time, and I'm using it, but I'm okay without it. But I
Yeah.
see people go through literal withdrawal, and you did initially, but what you're saying is a little bit initially,
Yeah.
but now you've had new habits 30 days kind of deal. You've kind of adapted already.
I mean, if I have like an important text or email I'm waiting to hear back from, I'm nervous about not having my phone. But I mean,
Well, see, that's
I'm not
the
that
thing.
important.
Yeah,
I don't have that many people trying to reach
well, that's
me.
what happens with me is I don't, I'm waiting to hear from a movie director. I'm waiting to hear from my agent. I'm waiting to hear if you're going to be able to come record at 4.
The answer is yes. I will be there at 4.
You made it today. You always make it. I don't want to suggest you don't. But my point is, that's the thing about changing messages and people not checking their phone. If I'm addicted, it's not to the smartphone. I'm addicted to the response I'm awaiting from somebody else. Let me be clear. And that counts. So I will own that one.
Yeah.
Around the areas that feel important
Yeah.
to me. So what's our way through? You've read about some families that do things where they'll have certain nights of the week where parents with teens, they'll walk in and have a box. You know of these boxes. Everybody will put their phone in the box. And the tales that have come out of these families, I have friends that have done it. I've read about people that have done it. The tales that have come out of these families of what has happened in those evenings, like they're talking again. I heard one father say, we found ourselves playing a game.
The lost art form of game playing.
Yeah, right. Game playing. But think about it. Like even at Christmas, everybody's got their phones out and they're looking. It's kind of, there's less odds it will emerge in game playing, you know. But so what are teens going to do? I mean, what are parents going to do? I'm a fan of the nonprofit Wait Until 8th, which advises, you know, but young people, parents, don't give them a fully charged smartphone. And I don't mean electrically charged, meaning you can turn off the internet. There's a lot of things you can do to neuter a smartphone, if you will, where you can give them an actual device to call you. If needed or message, but you can take away a lot of the more addictive applications of it.
I mean, I think people just need to start taking it as serious as other addictions. It's raised the suicide rates, depression, anxiety. this is killing people. Like, it's not this
Absolutely.
harmless
And sending them into
scrolling.
depression, even if they don't end up at a critical level. There's a peer of yours that I know that during y'all's senior year, I remember this is somebody that I watched go through several years of college, and they seem to be doing fine. And I remember seeing this young woman and like, how you doing? And what it turned out is they'd never considered themselves having a smartphone addiction before, but suddenly things weren't, it's their senior year, they're a little depressed. They found themselves looking at TikTok videos. It's almost comical, but it's not until 3 a.m. Just sitting there scrolling. And then the next day they were tired and depressed. And so they've arrived at a senior year of college, and it should be the perfect time, yet this device and associated apps have just pulled them into this dark abyss.
Yeah.
And suddenly they're like, what am I doing?
Right. Well, you don't have to live that way. This isn't the only way. Just because it's there doesn't mean that's how you have to live. And I think same thing when we talk about alcohol. Like, use it carefully.
Right.
Know that no one is immune to being an addict.
Nobody is immune to being
you think you're immune, and then you end up in a hole that you didn't expect to be in. And I think social media is the same way.
Mm-hmm.
What are you believing? What are you filling your mind with and your brain with? And that's influencing yourself, your kids, the people around you. And so obviously there's a million different things you could do, a million different restrictions you can put on your kid's phone, on your phone. But I just think the biggest thing is taking it as serious as any other addiction.
Because when you remove distractions, what I know and so many people know is that you can find a life that's richer and better than you ever imagined. There's a world of opportunity out there, and it might be a smaller, simple hobby. You just don't know what you want to do with your time. It's everybody I know that when you remove all that adds no value, something that just takes your time, it's kind of amazing what will grow in that space. All right, check us out. You can sign up for our newsletter, alittlecrazy.com. Visit there. Put in your email address. You can get that. Learn more about the podcast. Follow us, tell your friends, and come back and listen to us next week as we are back with more.